Okay.
I assume those just two securities.
Imagine you're a happily married couple and you and your wife is infertile. You're homosexual living with your partner, a single adult in the workforce. Whatever the reasoning of your background, most adults share the same fixation of wanting to raise children. The miracle of birth is amazing, but for some it is impossible to conceive a newborn child. For others, it is that they are a young mother still in school and they are not able to give the full love that a child deserves. So instead of aborting a baby, try an independent adoption. I'd like to show you some good reasons why prospective adoptive parents should adopt independently instead of through an agency. Independent adoption is the best choice for couples looking to adopt a newborn child. For the birth parents to receive and help continue receiving closure after the ordeal, and for the unrestricted degree of openness during the whole adoption process. First, let's see how independent adoption helps couples of all backgrounds adopt a newborn child. Independent adoption has virtually no eligibility requirements, whereas the age, race, religion, marital history, number of previous children, proof of infertility, that has no relevance in an independent adoption, whereas in an agency you would be turned down. According to the Adoption Resource Book, gay applicants, when trying to be honest about their relationships with an agency, will likely encounter resistance when they are trying to adopt a newborn. So independent adoption is the best route for them as well. An infant placed directly with the adoptive couple after it is born is given directly from the mother after it is born from the nurse to the adoptive parents, whereas in a traditional agency, it'll be placed in the foster home for a period of months, whereas the adoptive parents can take that baby home from the hospital when it is ready to be released. And according to the Complete Adoption Handbook, 50 to 80% of birth mothers who go through an agency adoption do not relinquish the rights of their child afterwards, whereas they're going through an independent adoption, 75 to 90% of the women choosing that way will release their child. Now let's see how choosing to adopt independently helps the biological mother and father with their closure. The biological parents of the adoptee receive the most closure when placing a child up through an independent adoption because when choosing to adopt independently, they get to meet and greet with the adoptive parents. Agencies would be very optimistic about even giving away the adoptive parents' information, not even photos. So it's a face-to-face factor, and it relieves a bunch of fears that the biological mother have with the adoption process. The Complete Adoption Handbook tells us as well that mothers' fees are covered with medical, legal, counseling, transportation to and from the hospital bills, and for the counseling up to 8 months after the pregnancy. Although the birth mother will still feel sad about placing her child up for adoption, she will have made a concise decision on who she would like to take care of her child on a face-to-face factor. According to baby selling, if you give the baby to an agency, it could be in a foster home for up to a year before finding an adoptive family, and that year is crucial for the development of a baby. Finally, independent adoption allows for an unrestricted amount of openness throughout the whole adoption process. The birth family is rewarded with the openness of an independent adoption through that the birth mother develops a complete confidence in the adoptive parents. She also can actively enroll for personally searching for prospective adoptive parents. And if desired, the birth mothers can remain in indirect or direct contact with the adoptive parents via emails, report card checkups, pictures, even coming and visiting on birthdays. The adoptive parents benefit from the acquainted with the birth mother from that the adoptive parents can learn about the birth mother's biological history more in depth than an agency would tell them. They could learn about the birth mother's physical traits, her intellectual abilities, and her personal skills as far as motor skills and reflexes and functions, which will all be in contact with her soon-to-be child for the adoptive parent. It also gives the adoptive parents fewer fears because they as well get to have a face-to-face confrontation with the prospective parents. It allows the adoptive parents to have a medical history of the birth child as well, so that for any future medical problems with their child as far as respiratory, cardiovascular, and any future genetical problems that could be perceived 10, 15, 20 years down the road, they can all be linked, whereas an agency would never give any of the information on the biological family out. The adoptee is better able to understand the situation because he can understand his biological roots, and that understanding that his adoption and his life is not a secret. And also that he needs to understand that he was not just placed on the planet, that he was born by biological parents, raised and adopted by adoptive parents to where he is now in his relationship now. So I hope you would like to think about independent adoption now as the best way to adopt for you and for future family and relatives that you may know. I have now told you how independent adoption is the ideal way to adopt, how it allows biological family the needed closure after this tough decision, and how the level of openness through the whole independent adoption process helps the adoptive family triangle through this situation. I was born on November 29th, 1987, at around 2 o'clock in the morning, when my biological father told my mother that he did no longer want to be a part of my life anymore. So my mom moved from Colorado back to Annapolis, moved in with her grandmother, and after 8 months of searching for a boyfriend, met my dad, who is now my dad today through adoption. And after 6 months of dating, my dad asked my mom 2 questions. First, if he could legally, independently adopt me as his own child, and second, would she marry me? And so when my mom said yes to that question, I was given an adoptive, independently father. He was given a son, and everyone now is happy with the wife and that. And this book right here is the book that my dad gave to me on my 2nd birthday, which would have been, for him, his first son's first birthday. And obviously, here in Rhode Island, I now have this today, and it will always be with me. And I would like to thank my dad for that opportunity of allowing me to be a sole survivor for independent adoption.